Coming to you live from the KQCK radio station compound, nestled in the beautiful Santan Mountains. Marc J. Victor, world-renowned man of peace and attorney for freedom. In a world of coercion and war, a peaceful man stands tall. Now, for your weekly dose of freedom and peace. A peaceful man stands tall. Ladies and gentlemen, the man of peace himself, Marc J. Victor, brings to you the Attorney for Freedom Show.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Attorney for Freedom Show. And, I like our opening music.
The end bothers me every time I see it now, the end, because I know Mike's stressing.
Yeah, it's true. If you're going to throw Megadeth in there, it needs to go on a little bit longer.
I agree. And it's on my desktop sitting there.
But actually, you cut off Lou Rawls to bring in the Attorney for Freedom Show today.
I know. I just felt it was one show that could do that.
It's a whole different kind of music, and there's nothing wrong with Lou Rawls. I mean, it's very
I like Lou Rawls,
especially for Valentine's Day.
I don't even know who Lou Rawls is.
It's not exactly a Valentine's Day song, but it's Lou Rawls.
Well, for those of us who were born before 1980, we do.
So, anyways, today is the anything but anything goes on the Attorney for Freedom. We're just going to talk about lots of different news stories, all kinds of things going on today in the news. It's really hard for us to pick a topic today, so I thought we'd just cover lots of different stories. And, of course, people can call in if they got some topic they want to throw out on the table. I mean, we did immigration last time. We didn't get a lot of phone calls on immigration. I know there's got to be somebody who disagrees with us.
I do have something for Tracy for Valentine's Day today. I wanted to give her on the air.
Well, that's good. Why don't we do that first? Let's get that out of the way. I don't know if it's coming from
Lady
Joe.
In the studio.
Is this okay to put on the air? But
Tracy,
I know. My husband's here too. Right?
That's right. You know what? That I'm going to stay in my seat. But here you go.
Maybe
Tracy.
that's what the Lou Rawls music was.
It was actually a primer for my gift. You ready, Tracy?
I'm ready.
The question is, are our listeners ready? Oh, that was sweet.
It's a Valentine's Day kiss.
Oh, I thought it was like a mouse or something. Because, oh my gosh, don't even bring up mouses with me. I had a horror story, mouse story.
Joe, are you
2
sure?
years ago.
Are you sure that's not for Mike?
All right, it was.
Mike's a nice guy.
I hope it's not, Joe.
The little tiny one at the end is for you, Mark.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, though, we should say. But lots of things going on in the news today, right? I mean, the first thing...
Thank you, Joe, by the way.
You're welcome.
That was nice. Lots of things going on in the news today. What about this merger? I mean, we got American Airlines and U.S. Airways are merging. It's all over the news. I think it was officially announced today. Billions and billions of dollars at stake here. Huge merger. Now we've got the biggest airline in the entire world. I think they're going to call it American Airlines. Two companies. I mean, in as free market a world as we have here in the United States. And they decided, for whatever reasons, their respective boards of directors have decided it's in their mutual interest to merge. Sounds like a done deal. Why are we talking about this on the Attorney for Freedom Show? Why? Because the government still needs to approve this stuff. Why?
Not just the government, but isn't it the Department of Justice? What do they have to do with this?
That they have this big story that we've got this big merger between these two private companies. And, incidentally, because I travel both of these airlines sometimes, I actually got an email today announcing.
I did too.
Yeah, we announcing, say, here are all the benefits. We're going to put your miles together. There's all this great stuff going on. And then you hear at the end of the story normally, well, it still needs to be approved by the Justice Department. I mean, really? I mean, where on earth does our government, under our Constitution, get the authority to start blessing mergers between private companies?
Isn't it a private company, like a private entity?
Two private companies getting... And now, look, because the other side's not here. And I would love to have the other side here, by the way. They're going to say, well, look, Mark... Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution very strictly limits the powers of Congress to certain things, and regulating interstate commerce is one of those things. And, of course, this comes under that. Well, everything comes under regulating interstate commerce, from the drug war, probably right down to the amount of water in your toilets, to the Civil Rights Acts. Everything comes under regulating interstate commerce. But really, is this the kind of thing that we as free people would want our government to do? Now, I can already hear the callers, Joe. They're already getting upset.
Let's open the phone lines.
They're getting upset already because what they're thinking is, we're going to have a monopoly. If we don't have the government blessing it, then we're going to have one airline that controls the whole world, and they can charge whatever they want for tickets.
No, but what if it's something even dumber than that? What if it has something to do with, like, because it's involving the Department of Justice. What if it's something regarding security, or we got to make sure, the FAA, the flight plans and all. It's like U.S. Airways has been flying and Americans been flying. Like, what if it's more something...
Can't they handle
crazy like that?
Did you guys hear about the medical thing that one of the airlines, the government, everyone's being sued over? This old lady that had to walk through this TSA checkpoint had to take her shoes off, and apparently somebody in the last 50 times walking through had some really bad case of athlete's foot, and this diabetic lady's got some serious strep infection now in her feet.
Oh no!
I'm serious, and they're like, "You take that shit off, or you're not." I'm sorry, you take those shoes off, or you're not walking through there.
Well, as I understand the TSA policy, had this lady actually showed up with a minor child, then she wouldn't have had to go through the whole. The radiation bath scan. She would have been exempted from that.
True? Wow.
I think that's
no,
the rule.
and even shoes. If you're under 12 or you're older than a certain age, like 70 something, you don't have to take your shoes off.
And from what I read, there's a passport program too that you can join as a frequent traveler.
There is a new program.
When you get over there, when you get to you say, "Hey, I'm part of the frequent traveler thing," and they scan your passport,
and you go right through.
And you go right through. They're like, "Okay, we know you don't have any arms on."
No, but why couldn't someone beat the system, go through 100 times, and he's great, he's a frequent flyer, whatever, and then on that 101th time, he has a I think he's ready to hurt someone.
If you get a bad person and they've got bad ideas in their head to do bad things to people, there's so many things one could come. I mean, if this was the introduction to terrorism 101 or something, I'm sure we could sit around and kick up all kinds of ideas to do horrible things to people, and there probably are groups out there like that. You can't stop everything. I mean, here on the news right now, we got the Carnival cruise ship that appears to be floating adrift with thousands of. Bad things happen in the world, and not everything can be prevented. Should we have a law now banning cruise ships because thousands of people could be stranded? Life happens. Bad things happen. Not every bad thing.
Same with cars. Should we not drive in cars? Like, there's car accidents that happen.
Not every bad thing that happens requires a government law behind it to deal with. We have so many laws right now on everything. So I just thought it was a little strange that these two private companies that seem to be doing pretty well in a relatively free market in terms of dealing with air travel now need the permission slip of the Department of Justice to bless their merger to go for it. Just not the kind of thing.
Or is that
no,
it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's part of the sort of the antitrust acts, and it's it just doesn't seem to me to be the kind of thing that should be happening in a free country. But what do we got already? Who's our first caller?
Pembroke, Florida says, "Would you say the government is just evil? Do we live in a free society, or is this a collective?"
Actually, I like the first part of that question because I don't want to be misunderstood here. I'm not saying that the government is evil. In fact, I don't even think that most politicians, and I'm especially referring to the ones who disagree with me, who want to expand the government, I don't think that they're evil. I think that these mostly, and not all of them, but mostly are good people who have good ideas in their head, who want to improve the lives of other people, who go to the government with great ideas in their head. It's just that they're wrong about the methods for getting this done. Using the government to coerce people into doing things is anti-freedom, and it's wrong for that reason, but it also just doesn't work out very well.
I wouldn't say they have good ideas, maybe good intentions.
Well,
their ideas are awful.
When I mean about their ideas, I think if you sat with your average socialist politician and you said, "Are you for peace?" they would say, "Yeah." "Are you for having the children of the world be fed nutritious food?" they would say, "Yes." "Are you for having people prosper and accumulate, live their lives however they want?" they would say yes. And so I think we have sort of the same types of goals in mind. The difference is they think they can legislate that. They think they can impose from top down and tell everyone else what to do. So I don't think that government is evil. I don't think it's an evil notion. In fact, I don't even think that socialism is evil. Yeah, I said it. I don't think socialism is evil. In fact, I think one could, I'm glad this came up, I think one could be a libertarian and a socialist. Yes, I said it. You could be a libertarian, a free person, man of peace or woman of peace, and still a socialist, so long as you don't force other people to join your socialist
commune. That's where the problem comes in.
Of course, that's where the problem comes in, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
There are voluntary
communes and things like that.
There are voluntary communes. There's nothing libertarian or anti-freedom about those. I mean, we could agree to live together, and even according to the way Karl Marx said we ought to live, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, a complete socialist notion, and be perfect libertarian. So long as if somebody says, look, I don't want to join the commune, we don't force them to join. Therein lies the difference between real people of peace and people who pretend to be for peace. We refuse to force other people to live any particular way.
Trent from Marbresis, California, and here's a new term I've never heard of. He says, what is your position on corporate personhood?
Actually, I think it's an interesting question if I understand what he's asking. There's a legal fiction that says a corporation is a person. It's treated as a person. Personally, it doesn't.
Never knew that.
I never heard of that one.
No pun intended. No, a corporation is a person, and they get sometimes depending on tax status, they get taxed. The corporate, there's corporate earnings that get taxed. And the reason for this is to have individuals shielded from liability. That's the main reason. So people can go out and say, look, I'm doing business, and even my corporation, the law firm of Marc Victor, which, by the way, you can always reach me at attorneyforfreedom.com. But my law firm, when you hire my law firm, you're hiring Marc J. Victor PC, professional corporation, not Marc J. Victor, the individual. And the reason for that is it encourages capitalists to go out and venture capital, spend money on businesses. If the business goes bad, you can't sue them personally. The reason this makes sense is because they're not holding themselves out as individuals. If I said, look, hire me, the individual Marc J. Victor, and then I do something wrong and I'm immune from a lawsuit, there's a problem there. And that's the reason why a corporation has to advertise, look, I'm a corporation. That's why I got to put PC after my name. And in the fee agreements at our law firm, you are contracting with Marc J. Victor PC. I know a lot of libertarians don't like this notion, and I think that really this is not something that's sort of required or prohibited by a free society. This is just sort of the course of dealing. If you have corporations and you have companies that are sort of persons under the law, and that's what you're contracting with, and it's clear to everyone in the marketplace this is what you're contracting with, there's no problem with that. If an individual holds him or herself out as an individual and that's what you're contracting with, then there's no liability protection.
One little funny story before we get to that call, Joe. I know you know about this. Recently a guy wanted to test the theory, so he rode in the HOV lane, and he just rode by himself. But he had his corporation papers in the glove box.
Oh my God!
And he got pulled over by the police, and the police said, "You're riding in the lane by yourself." He says, "No, I'm not. I have somebody with me." He looks in the car. He says, "Who's with you?" He says, "My corporation is with me. They're a person."
Wow! So what happened?
Well,
Did that work?
I don't think it's
know.
It's yet to be resolved. But I'm going to go out on a limb and make a bold prediction here. I don't think that's going to work.
No, I don't
or
either.
we could get Shelton to get out there.
Well, Shelton's
Do
the
a
one that I got
test.
that story from. So.
Oh, are you serious? It is him?
He put the story up.
Everybody's
my gosh.
Everybody's favorite libertarian activist. What do you got, Joe?
If the first 3
449,
questions
449.
determine how our show's going to go, we've got some level-headed questions out there today.
I like our questions so far
me
today.
too. Mary Ellen from St. George, Utah, very level-headed, said, I'd like to know Mr. Victor's position on the draft.
Well, look, there is no reconciling a draft in a free society, period. There's nothing to comment on there. There's no middle ground there. You cannot have the government taking people's children by force without their consent and enlisting them in the military and sending them places to fight against their will and have a free society. There just is no way to reconcile a draft in a free society. But I would say this. Just like I joined the Marine Corps voluntarily. Look, if you've got a good society, a legitimate society, you're not going to have to coerce, and you got a legitimate threat and a good cause. You don't have to coerce people. I mean, I signed up.
People are going to want to help.
Yes,
anyways.
of course.
Yeah.
And I can tell you even today, Even today, if our country was invaded or there was a real threat to our country from some foreign power, guys like Mike, who served in the Army, and guys like me, who served in the Marine Corps, and probably guys like Joe, who never served anywhere, would be the first people in line to go defend our nation. If the cause is just, there's not going to be a problem getting people to enlist and to fight. The only reason you need a draft is when the cause is not just. Yeah. And so what I would say is a real society, a legitimate society with a legitimate threat doesn't need a draft, and there just is no way to reconcile a draft with a free society. Just like I've said on this show many times before, there is no way, in my opinion, to reconcile a drug war in a free society. It's just no way to reconcile it. I mean, either people own themselves and they're in charge of what they put in their own bodies, good or bad, or they're not. And someone else is in charge, the president or the majority or your neighbor or someone else. But in part of a free society, just by definition, you got to be in charge of yourself. If you don't own yourself, you're not even a free person. You're a slave. That means somebody else owns you. And there's just no way to reconcile that. So I'm glad the caller called, but and I know, and I guess I'm a little bit curious to know how many people in our country, especially in today's day and age, where I think very few of the conflicts that we have had in the past many decades really have been justified. I mean, I think that what sounds to me like World War II was perfectly justified. I think that the action in Grenada was justified because we went in and rescued Americans who were in danger. Some people can make an argument about Afghanistan in terms of whether there was some justification there. But really beyond that, I don't even know what the argument would be. I mean, Vietnam, I think it would be hard to argue that was justified. Iraq, I don't think you can argue that was justified. I mean, on what basis? This is a country that had no capability to threaten our country, didn't even make a threat against our country. I mean, when we went in and we got Saddam and they put him on trial, and I put that in quotes, they put him in trial, it was for crimes that happened supposedly
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years earlier. I mean, it wasn't anything
when he was our friend, no less.
Right. I know that's this is the other thing, and people. There's a lot of wisdom in things that a lot of our founding fathers said. Not everything, because obviously they were bad things about our founding fathers, right? I mean, this is the Attorney for Freedom show, and we talk about the truth here. I mean, even Thomas Jefferson, who everybody knows I love, he was a slave owner, and he never freed his slaves. I realize it was against the law to free slaves at the time he was there, but nonetheless, he didn't do the right thing and free his slaves. He's not perfect. That was clearly wrong, but there was a lot of wisdom in what our founding fathers said. And when George Washington on his way out said, avoid these entangling alliances, I got to believe it was exactly for the reason Mike just pointed out. Not just was Saddam our friend, Osama bin Laden was our friend.
Yep.
Osama bin Laden was our friend. He was part of working with the CIA. He was our good pal. And so we should stay out of these places unless there's a real threat to our nation. We should butt out of the affairs of other countries.
Well, wasn't it George Washington that did that?
Yeah, George Washington in his farewell address gave a speech where he encouraged and I would think warned us from getting involved in these entangling alliances. And when Thomas Jefferson came in as the third president of the United States, that's exactly the position he took. He downscaled our Navy. He made our naval ships smaller so they wouldn't even be able to cross the Atlantic. He didn't want to get involved in entangling alliances. These guys were about peace through trade, and I believe in peace through trade. The countries who we trade with, those are our friends. Why are they our friends? Because their powerful business interests and our powerful business interests have a mutual interest in continuing a peaceful relationship. That's the way you ferment world peace, by trade.
Karen from Muncie, Indiana. Karen Brothers from Muncie, Indiana, said she's been troubled for weeks about a statement that you made.
Oh, good.
She's been trying to figure it out. She's been mentioning it to people, and every time she mentions it to someone, they blow her out of the water like she's dumb. So she wants to know, if drugs were legalized, wouldn't there be millions more drug addicts, and wouldn't this be the final point to crumbling our society?
Well, the thing I would, Karen, right?
Karen Brothers.
Karen, what I would ask you to respond to these people who think you're crazy when you say this is say to these people, well, do you currently use methamphetamine? Because it's illegal right now, and they'll I would expect, say no. And then you say, well, if meth was legal tomorrow, would you run out and start using methamphetamine? If they're honest with you, they're going to say no. Because guess what? just like meth users now aren't deterred by the law against meth. People who don't use meth right now, they're not going to run out and start using methamphetamine. It's just not the case. I mean, if you want to smoke marijuana now, and again, these are generalizations, and I shouldn't overstate the case here. There probably are some people who are not. Let's just take marijuana for example. There probably are some people who are not using marijuana right now because it's illegal, at least in the states where it's still illegal, and there's only 2 that it's legal for all purposes right now. There probably are some who are deterred just because of the law. But in fairness, right, because we're talking about the truth here on the Attorney for Freedom show, let's be real. There probably are lots of people who are smoking marijuana now just because it's illegal, right? Now, I know you're thinking I'm crazy, but think back.
True.
Think back to when you were under 21. How many of you refrained from using alcohol when you're under 21? I would say not many. I know I drank when I was under 21 in violation of the law, like most people did. But when I turned 21, we all had the fun. We went out and we bought the drinks legally. But by the time I was 22, I pretty much lost interest in the whole thing. And
I don't even drink now. That's what's so, and I can't.
If I have 2 drinks a year involving alcohol,
I don't drink
it's
either.
probably a lot. But there's no thrill in that. It's just kind of like if you've been to Amsterdam, you'll see the Americans. They come in and they rush into the coffee houses and they smoke marijuana.
And after 2 days, they're like, I'm done.
After a few
had
days,
fun.
it's the thrill of being able
The taboo
it's
wears
sort
off.
of gone. So there's probably some people on both sides of that margin who would use and who wouldn't use. But there's also the other point, and I don't want to miss that other point there as well. In a free society, if other competent adults want to actually put substances into their bodies, who are we to tell them they can't? I mean, it's Karen, right? The whole premise of what you're saying, Karen, sort of derives from this notion that we have an interest in keeping other competent adults from putting substances in their body that they want to. And I would just simply say, in a free society, it's up to them. If they really want to put substances into their own body, that's their right. It's their choice because it's their body. We can try to persuade them all day long, and depending on the substance, like for example, if it was methamphetamine, I would try my darndest to persuade anybody who was even an acquaintance of mine to not use meth. And the arguments I would make is it's very likely to ruin your life and rot your teeth and ruin your health. But at the end of the day, if you're a competent adult, and let's make no mistake about it, lots of meth users, and I get to talk to them all the time, right? Because I represent people who use methamphetamine when they're charged with crimes. I say it's not that they want their teeth rotting out of their face. There are things about the use of the drug that they like. I mean, not everything that's unhealthy has no upside at all. And
Truck drivers use it to stay awake.
Yeah, there's also a smaller dose. Lots of them keep it just to stay awake. So look, I don't pass those kinds of judgments on other free people. I try to tell them what my opinion is, but at the end of the day, if they're competent adults, it's really their decision. And it's not a free society. To me, isn't worthy of the title of free society unless we tolerate other people doing peaceful things that we don't approve of. And that's the hallmark of a real free society. What do you got for us, Joe?
Jake from Austin, Texas, says he tried to call in last week unsuccessfully, and he is excited to get through.
Oh, good. I'm glad to get through.
Former military. I served in Iraq, and if the U.S. is not the freest country, then who's freer? Please tell me.
Well, look, I think that, first of all, there is a list that...
He said, is there a better place?
There are a couple of lists, I think, and I forget which... Is it Reason Magazine, maybe, that puts out a list every year? It may be Reason. There's maybe
remember who it is
you could Google this. Just go online. It might be Reason
Maybe
Magazine.
Reason, but it could be somebody
And there are
else.
actually a couple of lists. There's one list that deals with civil liberties, and then there's another list that deals with economic liberties. In the United States is not the top of... Not the number one of either list, and the United States has been slipping on both lists. Now, that's not to say we're unfree, but look, we have a certain groups of freedoms here. Other countries have other groups of freedoms. If, just take what we were just talking about, marijuana. If you go to Amsterdam, that's a freedom that they have that most places in the United States don't have. If you go to New Zealand, they have legalized prostitution there. We don't have that freedom. They also have sex shows. You can go and watch a live sex show in certain parts of the world. Like, for example, in Holland, they have a freedom there that we don't have here. There are different. We have better freedoms in terms of gun rights here, at least in Arizona, than they do in lots of other countries. So
that's a perfect example that you're like, they have sex shows, but if you want to go to the sex show, you go. No one's forcing you to go to the sex show.
Right. If you don't like it, don't go.
And we're not. And by the way, we're not making a moral judgment on this, whether it's good or bad. We're
it's not.
I'm glad you made the point, Mike, because I'm not endorsing sex shows. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, look, freedom is about choice.
So people are in charge of themselves.
Yeah. If you want to go to the sex show, go to the sex show. If you don't want to go to the sex show, don't. If you want to picket the sex show and say everybody who goes is immoral, that's your right too, as long as you're picketing peacefully and you're at a spot where you're not trespassing on anything. That's fine too. That's the clash of ideas that's so exciting to people in a free world. It's a free market of ideas, and it's wonderful. And we ought to relish that rather than trying to smash everybody into the same sort of mold. We should relish the idea that people are different, and as long as they're peaceful, who cares? And so, look, there are different freedoms. There are also economic freedoms. Countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, on the economic scale, they score higher than our country does on the economic. Why? Lower taxes, lower regulation. There are places in the world that don't have capital gains taxes. And so I think that it's really false to just say, well, we're the land of the free. If you wanted to make an argument that we're not the land of the free, and this to my friend here, former military, look, I think it's sort of hard. I would ask him to think about this issue. For me, it's hard to reconcile that we refer to our country as the land of the free, yet at the very same time, we incarcerate more people, even as a percentage of our population. As a percentage of our population, we put more people in jail, in prison, than any other country on the face of the earth. So you could legitimately, there is objective evidence that you could support the statement to say we are the land of the incarcerated. America, the United States, is the land of the incarcerated, and we're the hands-down champ, the land of the incarcerated. Great, we win if that's something to win. How can we also be, at the same time we're the land of the incarcerated, the land of the free? Very hard for me to reconcile that point. So I'd ask my friend who called in, and I'm happy he got through, to just think about that point. How can we both be the land of the incarcerated and the land of the free? Now, just one quick little footnote. That's the reason we do this show. Okay, we used to be the land of the free. That's why we're the world's superpower. We had more freedom here relative to other countries. We did a great job with the free market. We had low taxes, low regulation, lots of civil liberties, good separation between church and state. Believe whatever you want, practice whatever you want, keep it separate from the government, and we prospered. We became the richest, highest standard of living, wonderful nation. That's why we do this show, because we want to get back to those very principles that made our nation legitimately the land of the free. It's something you got to keep earning, and we've lost our edge.
Rob from San Francisco said it just doesn't make sense that libertarians trust corporations over elected people.
Well, it's not that we trust corporations over elected people. I mean, look, corporations are legal fictions. Corporations are they're just ways to have liability protection. Really, that's what they are. It's not that we trust or distrust corporations, but to parse this idea down a little bit, the problems we have with corporations, and I know there's a lot of people that are very anti-corporation. In my view, the problems with corporations arise when the corporations and the government get intertwined. When the corporations run to the government and they get laws passed to get an advantage, a competitive advantage over other corporations, because that's what corporations want to do. They want to gain advantages to make money. Then we had a bad situation. If the government said, look, we are no longer an instrument of coercion for you to gain an advantage over your competition. We're just protecting people's rights. Go out there and make money. Where's the harm? Where's the harm in a corporation going out and trying really hard to do the best at delivering goods and services at the lowest price to the people who want them, so they can make as much money as possible? To me, that's a fantastic state of affairs. We ought to encourage that.
And Mark, getting back to the freest countries, I did a quick Google search. It's the Heritage Foundation that does it on economic freedom.
I think that's maybe one.
I think they do it on there's on the economic freedom. This is the latest one, 2013 Index of economic freedom countries. We rank number 10. If you want to know the who's number 1, it's Hong Kong. Singapore second, Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, Canada, Chile, and Denmark come in before us.
So 9 countries, at least on the economic scale, that are more free than the United States. I think it was Reason Magazine that did it years ago. I thought they did it every year. It is sort of a free market libertarian think tank type of magazine. I suppose if somebody wants to email me, get a hold of me at attorneyforfreedom.com, we could dig it out and find the list. But every year they come out with a civil liberties one, and we don't lead that one either.
We're usually not even in the top 10, actually, on that one.
And we're falling behind. Look, we have a situation now where, I don't know if people realize this, where the President of the United States has authority now to just unilaterally issue an order calling for an execution of Americans. I mean, literally, President Obama could say, I'm going to order people in the government to go out and execute this person. There's no review, there's no justice, there's no trial, there's nothing. And not only that, he doesn't even have to disclose the fact that he's done this. He can completely remain silent. So how do you have a country where you have what I would call an iron-fisted dictator who can literally order the execution of a citizen of the country that he presides over? Does that compatible?
That makes you feel a little less free.
Is it really compatible with a free society?
Which kind of leads us into one of our news stories. But if Joe's got a call, we'll take that first.
Yeah, we got one here.
Yeah, it's the Anything Goes
Becky
show today.
from Bedford, New Jersey. How do you feel about secondhand smoke people as far as the laws in some states that prevent you from smoking in restaurants, bars, clubs, planes?
It's a great question.
I mean, how does that work for you?
It's a great question, and it tells me that Becky's thinking about the issues, because the question here is one of trespass, right? I mean, of course, I'm not a cigarette smoker. I hate secondhand smoke. And Tracy's not a cigarette smoker. She hates secondhand smoke. So here's the rule. Becky, if you come to our house, if we invite you to our house and you say, hey, I'm a smoker, we have a right to say, not in our house, you're not. Sorry. There's a rule. If you want to come to our house, you come at our pleasure. We can decide if you smoke or not inside the house. And we may say smoke in the backyard. We say no smoking. We may say no smoking on our property at all. It's our decision. And if we say there's smoking at the house, and Joe, you get invited and you come over and we allow smoking and you don't like that, what's your remedy?
I can leave.
You don't get to come to the house.
Yeah, right.
You don't get to make the rules at our house. Now, if we come to your house, then you get to make the rules, right? You could say there's smoking or there's no smoking. So everybody seems to understand this when we deal with someone's private home. Why is it so different when we're dealing with a private business? Why is it so different?
Yeah,
that's where they jump the track.
I don't know why.
I never thought of that either.
Why do we have to
Who
jump
gets to decide? How about the guy that owns the business?
Yeah,
Why
right.
do we have to jump the track on that?
Why is
Because
that even a question?
It deals with this crazy notion that, well, it's open to the public. No, it's not. It's open to the people they want to have it open to. Who cares if they say, look, there's cigar smoking and there's tobacco smoking and there's even marijuana smoking. It's our place. Come in and smoke. In fact, if you don't smoke, you can't come in.
Right. Why would somebody that doesn't smoke go into a hookah bar?
I wouldn't want to go there.
Right?
I don't claim some right to walk into someone's place and then tell them what the rules are there. I mean, to me, it's offensive. I mean, I would just say, look, it's not my place. If you want me to come, if you want to track my business, you got to make a non-smoking place. I'm sorry. But they may say, sorry, Mark, we're not interested in attracting your business. We're going for a niche market, which is the smoker market. Come here and smoke all the way, all you like. And look, I don't...
There will be people that go there.
Of course there will be. And so that's the nature of freedom, everybody. So it is an interesting question. The issue of secondhand smoke, which is smoke sort of blowing over, what I would say is, where are we? Where are we standing? Right now, we're at Joe's studio, right? And so if Joe makes a rule that says Mark gets to smoke and it drifts over into Mike's area and Mike doesn't like that, Mike could take it up with Joe, and Joe gets to set the rules. And if Mike doesn't like the rules, Mike doesn't have to come.
That's right.
And what's so confusing about that? It's the same thing we always talk about. It's the same solution we always bring up, right? And these are all the same questions. I'm going to say it again. All of these questions. Mike and I had lunch with a woman this past week about immigration, and I think I asked her a question. Do you see now how the question of taxes, the drug war, what else did I put in there? Prostitution, a whole bunch of different things. They're all the same question, and she didn't see. But they're all the same question, which is, who gets to make decision about this property? The property owner or somebody else? And in the case of what happens on a particular piece of property in regards to secondhand smoke, who gets to make decisions about what the rules should be there? The owner of the property or somebody else. And I would just simply say, let's go with the owner of property. Okay, something's exciting.
You know what? You missed out because we were just reading that they're having such a great time on the Triumph over there, the Carnival Triumph. They're doing Bible studies now. And sharing baby food.
It says the morale has been great. You know what, Joe?
It's coming together.
You were asking me if I was on that ship that's stranded right now. What would you be doing? You know, my answer would be
40 hours to go back to dock.
I'd be trying to make the best of it.
Bologna sandwiches left and right.
You know what? I'd be organizing people, and we'd be coming up with some way to make.
We'd be having a freedom meeting on the
Lido deck. Those are the circumstances they're under right now.
A different name would be called the liberal.
Those are the Look. So much of life is about what's going on between your ears. In our first show, I think we talked about, are you positive or are you negative about the state of affairs in the United States? And look, like I've said, if you said to me, Mark, make a list of 10 reasons why you're pessimistic and negative about the state of affairs, I could easily come up with them. And if you said, Mark, come up with 10 reasons why you're positive about the state of affairs and you're excited about the future, I could come up with those. And so really it's a choice that I make. It's my choice about whether or not I choose to be optimistic about things or pessimistic about things. And I'm just saying, folks, life is so much better if you're optimistic.
And Ralph from Albuquerque, New Mexico said after the whole smoking thing, he says, are you liberal or are you conservative?
I'm neither.
What's up?
I'm for freedom.
There's only two areas, Mark. Come on.
You have to fit in
you
one of those.
fit in one of those boxes, Mark. Come on.
You have to be one.
This is a good. Let me explain it like this. I'll explain it like this. I think there are two boxes.
And he was very confused.
It's a legitimate question. I think there are two boxes also. There is one box that we can put people into. That box says the following: nobody has a right to tell somebody else what to do. You're in charge of yourself. You get to rule yourself with an iron fist if you like, but you don't get to rule other people. The only time the government should get involved is when somebody trespasses on someone else by force or fraud or something like that. Then there's the other box that says, no. You get to tell other people what to do. Whether they like it or not, you get to tell them how to live their lives, how to use their property, how to control their body. You can control their body. And that in that second box, let's put most Republicans and most Democrats. All they're arguing about is what things should we tell other people to do. Most Republicans will say, let's tell them to do X, Y, and Z. And then the Democrats say, no, we don't. They should be free to decide X, Y, and Z for themselves. But let's tell them what to do in regards to A, B, and C. I'm not interested in getting into that discussion. I'm in the first box. I'm an American. I'm a man of freedom and of peace. I don't tell other people what to do. I may advise them. If they ask me my advice, I'll sure give them an opinion. I may even give them an unsolicited opinion at times.
I've been known to do that.
And it may even be as forcefully delivered as I can deliver it, but it's an opinion. I'll stop short at the point where it says, now, if you say, Mark, are you going to try to coerce me and tell me I can't put this into my body, or I got to spend my money on this or that, or I can't use my property this way, so long as I'm being peaceful and I'm a competent adult, I'm going to stop short and say, you know what? This is not something that I would advise you to do. I think it's unwarranted, unhealthy, immoral, bad, unethical, whatever. But if you're not affecting another person, I'm not going to use force to try to change, to try to impose my will on you. That's the box I'm in. And I'll call that the American box. It's about freedom, folks. And, look, it's one thing to say you're for freedom. Anybody can say that. It takes about a half a second. I'm for freedom, right? It takes a second. I'm for freedom. But to actually be for freedom, that's much tougher.
I don't remember you ever saying this, but Tanner from Phoenix seems to think that he got out of it that he wants to know why you think an end should be put to birthright citizenship. I don't remember ever talking about that.
An end should be put to birthright citizenship?
We never said that.
No, I never said any such thing.
Maybe he called him the wrong show.
Yeah. No, I think that if you're born in the United States, you're a United States citizen. But I think I would add to this. I mean, the question isn't really should you be a citizen if you're born here or not. To me, the question is, what do you get as a result of being a citizen? And I don't think you should. What you get is the right to pursue your own happiness, the right to live free, the right to control your body and your money and your time and your things that you've acquired peacefully. That's what you get. What you don't get is the right to live at the expense of another person. You don't get the right to force your neighbor into doing things. You don't get the right to force your neighbor into subsidizing your activities or your health care or things of that nature. You're in charge of yourself.
This is where the problem is, Mark. People confuse the right to pursue happiness with the right to happiness.
That's right.
That's the problem.
It's an excellent point. It's a great point. And so, yeah, the right to pursue happiness, which means that I get to, first off, define what I mean by happiness, right? Because different things might make different people happy, right? Don't I have a right to define my happiness? If I say, look, my happiness is studying the Bible all day, that's my happiness. If I say my happiness is going on a Carnival cruise ship and hoping it doesn't break down and become adrift in the ocean for days, that's my happiness. I mean, I get to choose what my happiness.
You should be
and that's
able to.
the beauty of being free. You can define your own happiness. Then, once you've defined your own happiness, you get an opportunity to pursue your own happiness.
But you have no right to it.
Right. I mean, I may fall flat on my face. I may say, you know what's going to make me happy is making $50 million next year. That's what's going to make me. I have every right to say that, don't I? Mm-hmm. But if I only make $49 million last year, that doesn't mean I get to force $1 million out of my neighbor's wallet. He doesn't have to make sure that I achieve my happiness. That's the difference, and I think it's a great point, Mike.
Meredith from North Las Vegas says, I understand you feel there should be no taxes, but where in the hell would all the money come for the roads and more?
Who would build the roads?
Yeah, we get this a lot, and it is a legitimate.
Meredith, you should tune in every week.
It is a legitimate question. Let me just try to answer it like this. Look, I am in favor of changes in our society that would get us as close as possible to a free society, a voluntary society. What I mean by that is nobody is imposing their will on other people by force, and there's no taxation, and nobody's able to do anything. That's what I would like to see. Are we ever going to get there? I mean, it would be great. But I'm skeptical that we're ever going to actually get there. I'd like to pursue policies that get us as close to as possible to those things. Do I think, in theory, we're in a theoretical discussion. In theory, could we exist as a society without taxes? Yeah, I think we could. In terms of the roads, you have to sort of change a little bit about how you think about things. Do we really need the government to build the roads? Do we really need the government to maintain the roads? Do we really need to have the government do the types of things that it's doing right now? And I would suggest that the government really could do very, very, very little. And there are lots of things that we could do to fund those activities peacefully. I mean, for starters, if the government provides a good service in certain areas, people will pay for that, right? I mean, look, if our Navy keeps the waterways open for foreign countries to trade with us, I don't think there's anything wrong with them paying a fee for that service. I'm sure they would be happy to pay a fee for that service. I think we've got lots of lands in our country. I think those ought to be sold. I think when there's a country that's that ought to be in bankruptcy, like our country, that's as we sit here now, about $16.5 trillion in debt. Look, what happens personally when your debts far exceed your assets, you got to sell off your assets and pay your debts. I think we could do that. I think we could pay our debts, and I think we could have a surplus. We could probably put in a trust and could gather interest or be invested wisely and would throw off lots of monies for lots of different things. I think there are lots of things that we could do as a nation to generate funds without forcing people to spend money that they didn't want to spend.
Well, look at tolls. I mean, you have a choice to go through the toll, the express toll. You want to sit in traffic, or do you want an express toll?
We have those roads already.
Well,
Exactly.
Also,
so
the question was,
people are going to choose to do what they want to do.
the question was, could we get by without tax? Well, actually, we did get by without tax, as you know.
We didn't even have an
we didn't
income
even
tax.
have an
right?
income tax. The first so many years of this
It's a
country.
great point. Somehow we survived.
We
without
survived without it.
Yeah, the income tax didn't even come in until the early 1900s, and not that early either. And when it came in, there were debates about this, and the people who were against the income tax made allegations. So this thing someday will be 10% of your income, and the other side fired back and said things like, no, it'd never. They're just trying to get you crazy with this 10% figure. It'll never be that high.
Jeez.
But of course, as we've seen, once the tax comes in, it never goes away.
Never goes away.
No, it never goes away. But I think the answer to that is I think that there are lots of things that the private sector could do. There are lots of things that insurance companies can do. There are lots of services that the government can provide that could actually make money for people because they voluntarily chose to pay for it. I think we could get pretty far down the road without that in terms of having a free society. And you know what I'd love to find? I'd love to get to a spot in society where creative people are coming up with creative ways to fund things without taxation. Oh, would I love to see that day.
Penny Ruiz Charleston from, I believe she said Norman, Alaska, says, are there any environmental restrictions that are a good idea, or is it better to let the earth rot?
No, we don't want to let the earth rot. I mean, look, most private property is pretty well taken care of without regulations. I mean, you don't really need a government regulation for most people to take care of their backyard, right? They take care of their backyard because they own their property and they want to keep it up nicely. And so, look, I think that there should be environmental regulations such that if the activities that are occurring on one property are trespassing into a different piece of property, either in the air or in the water or some other way, that's a trespass. Let's just deal with it as a trespass. I mean, look, if I've got 500 acres of property and I've got a factory on my property and my property abuts Mike's property and Mike just likes to look at the birds or something, and I'm doing something on my property where I'm throwing smoke and soot and pollution.
Or you're dumping something toxic into this water table,
if I'm sending
right?
things over to Mike's property, aren't I trespassing on my... Isn't Mike being forced to subsidize my operation? And what's wrong with saying, hey, Mike saying, hey, Mark, look, you're trespassing on my property. Do we really need an environmental regulation to deal with that trespass? Whether it be by water or by air, it's still a trespass.
So what happens if Mike then says, so what? Or you say, so what? I'm not doing anything about it. Then what?
Mike might say,
I might take legal action then.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's perfectly
Makes
fine.
sense.
And Mike may also say, look, if you want to trespass and use my property in this fashion, pay me. Buy an easement or something along. Look, this is the way people work things out. I mean, I don't think we need a government Look, we've got so many laws and government regulations that if that plan to regulate everything, to tax everything, to regulate everything, to have a law against everything or compel you to do things, if that plan worked, we'd already be living in a utopia.
So could it work then that, say, we want to put a billboard up on a main road and we see somebody's backyard button up to the main road? Is it better to just be able to go and say, hey, dude, I'll give you $50 a month? Or is it better should you have to get a permit to do that?
Well, who owns the property?
That's
the guy does that. I'm asking to give him $50.
Well, then if he owns the property, he gets to make all the
decisions. But what happens if along this thoroughfare, there's hundreds and hundreds of homes and everybody hits up everybody to put a sign, and you happen to live by that neighborhood? Wouldn't that look like crap? Or does it matter?
Who owns the property?
Yeah, I think look, so many of these questions...
Well, that makes sense.
So many of these questions come down to ferreting out who owns the property.
Right.
If there's a billboard that's getting put up, who owns that property right there? Now, of course, we may contract for that in advance. We may say, look, if I'm a home builder, I may say, hey, Joe, I just bought 100 acres of property, and I see you got a piece of property here. I know you love putting ugly billboards up, but, I'm not really inclined to buy this piece of property unless you don't put billboards up, because my homeowners aren't going to like your big, ugly billboards. I may make a deal with you in advance, right? I may say, hey, Joe, I'll pay you X amount of dollars if you don't put up billboards or you agree to these restrictions or whatever. Then I could advertise to my homeowners and say, hey, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, buy a home in this area, and there's not going to be a big ugly billboard
you
over
could buy the property from you that has the billboards on it, so to assure that you would never put billboards up there again.
If I want to be in charge of what happens on Joe's property, I could buy Joe's property, and then I could be in charge.
What if there's a new owner and he decides to make new rules and people already bought in? They've been living there for 15 years, and now there's a new billboard.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean,
it's fun talking about these issues because these are all things that have occurred, and this is why we have contract law bleeding over into real estate law, property law. And the reason for that is Joe and I could make a contract, right? But Joe could then say, hey, he could honor the contract and he could go and sell to Mike. Mike says, I ain't got any deal with Mark. So now how do we deal with that situation? Well, that's how we got the conditions, covenants, and restrictions in property law. What I say to Joe is, look, I'm not just going to make a deal with you. I'm actually going to affect the bundle of sticks that you own as a property owner. You do no longer have the right to put up a billboard. And when you sell it to Mike, you didn't have the right to put up the billboard. You sold it to Mike with that restriction. It, as we say in the legal world, it runs with the land. So Mike bought subject to that CCR, which of course has to be disclosed. And so Tracy and I are building a home right now, and we come into that piece of property with existing CC&Rs. They give us a list.
Right,
They say,
that's
look,
a homeowners association, right?
well, that's part of one of the things that say, look, here's the list of restrictions. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Paint your house.
By the way, there's a homeowners association. Here's how this works. Here are the rules. We could say, you know what? We don't like those restrictions. We could live where we live right now, where we don't have a homeowners association and we don't have those restrictions, but we choose to live there maybe because we don't want our neighbors putting up a billboard, or maybe because we like the restrictions, or maybe we're willing to put up with the restrictions because we like other things. Whatever our reasons are, that's how it works.
Yeah, didn't we run into someone that says, oh, we were talking about the homeowner association, and he was saying, I kind of like the homeowner association because what if you do have that neighbor that has the junkyard? I mean, you sign up for what you want to live in.
Isn't that beautiful? That's the beauty
Free
of
market. Isn't that great?
The free market works.
You get to choose where and how and what rules you want to live by as where you live.
You know, look, I don't present this as a utopian view. Look, there are always going to be problems in society, but can't we at least agree on some basic rules? Like, I'm in charge of me, Tracy's in charge of Tracy, Joe's in charge of Joe, Mike's in charge of Mike, and if we have some interaction together, it needs to be a voluntary interaction. If it's not a voluntary thing, shouldn't we be able to say, well, that should be illegal and that should be stopped, that should be punished, or there should be a sanction for that? That's a coercive transaction. Why is that so hard? You know, you're still going to have problems determining whether I'm a competent adult, right? Maybe I'm on the border. Am I competent or not? Am I an adult or not? Was this a voluntary transaction or a coercive transaction? We could sit around and come up with lots of examples that could be on the border. Some people might say, no, that's voluntary, and others might say, no, that's coercive. That's the business of courts.
Yeah.
Let a court, a good judge, people who are competent and qualified, to get up there, listen to the totality of the circumstances, listen to everything, and make a ruling about whether this was a voluntary transaction or whether it's a coercive. Look, society's not going to be perfect. We're humans and we're not perfect. We have issues. We're still going to have issues. But if we can't at least agree on the basic ground rules, right, that you're in charge of you and I'm in charge of me, we don't get very far. And that's the other box we were talking about. Most Republicans, most Democrats, they're in the other box. They're arguing about we should get to force them into this. No, we should get to force them into that. And, you know, we're out here saying we shouldn't be forcing anybody into anything. They're saying, look, the wisdom of forcing them into this, because this, you know, take Mayor Bloomberg, for example, up in New York, the mayor of New York. He makes a good case, and I completely agree with him, that these big sugary sodas are horrible for you. They are absolutely terrible. They're very unhealthy. And he's not even saying, look, the small ones. He's just saying these big, gigantic things of soda that you can buy at stores.
Buckets.
We agree. We agree. Me and Mayor Bloomberg agree. Someday somebody will take a clip. And that's the only part they'll play.
Yeah.
Mark Victor and Mayor Bloomberg agree.
I see that front page of the LA Times.
I know.
And then, but see, somebody smart will say, yeah, but 2 minutes later, here's what he said.
Yeah.
They'll say, look, I agree with Bloomberg that these terrible, these very sugary, no nutritional value, people shouldn't drink them. They're really bad. I don't drink them. I don't drink Coke. I don't drink Pepsi. I don't drink that stuff. But here's where we disagree. Bloomberg says, because I've decided they're bad, I'm going to put into the law a coercive mechanism that tells Joe he can't have it. Whether Joe doesn't get to make the decision, Joe just can't have it. Now I choose not to buy it anyway.
Yep.
So I'm really not affected by Bloomberg's rule. But why do I oppose it? I oppose it. I disagree with him. Why? Because it's not something that the law ought to mandate. Even though I agree with him that these big sugary drinks are horribly bad. I don't want my kids drinking them. I don't drink them. But I don't want to tell another competent adult that they can't put something in their body. That's where we disagree. We disagree there. That's a fundamental, principled disagreement. Even though I agree with him underlying that these are bad drinks, it's the same, folks, for marijuana.
That's why I love popping a can of soda right in front of you and saying,
Wow.
oh my God, it's so good.
You know, and she does that.
I'll bet she does.
But you know, Tracy's in charge of Tracy.
Yep.
And
That's right.
she gets to drink that nasty, sugary, calorie laden,
Cream
no
soda.
nutritional value.
You have a cream soda. This was the first show you admitted you had a cream soda.
I did have a cream soda. I do like cream soda, but I don't drink the big sugary ones that Bloomberg.
Not
Bloomberg
the
would say,
big ones.
Bloomberg's decided I can have the small one, but not the big one. So
No,
I
but
guess
Yours
I'm
is
okay.
12 ounces, so it fits well
Exactly.
within the
That's
rule.
what I was saying. Yeah, there's the big gulps. They're like, what, 64 ounces, which is
look at the
unbelievably
arguments.
crazy. But
Hey,
why
you know
couldn't
what?
you have like 10 of them?
Hey, I got to tell you,
Drink,
I
drink,
used to
drink.
drink, no joke, I used to drink
Are you a big gulper?
2 of those a day.
Oh,
And,
my
you know,
God.
that's the other part of the argument.
52 ounce. I used to drink 2 of them a day and then need some cans
It's interesting.
at home.
It's interesting, Joe, because Tracy
But
raises
the
the other
diet,
part of the
diet. I like
argument
the
here.
chemicals.
Bloomberg doesn't accomplish what he wants to accomplish anyway, right? Because
No.
as Tracy points out, if Bloomberg says 64 ounces are now illegal, Tracy says you buy 230.
That's right.
You buy
Or you buy
230.
you buy a 12-pack of
He
soda.
still isn't going to legislate what other people are going to. They're still going to drink the same. And what are they? You're going to check in at one Circle K, and then it's going to at the next Circle K because we got information. You earlier bought this. No, you're going to be able to buy as much of this stuff as you want.
But they do that with cold medicine. You can't buy cold medicine without giving your
But here's
driver's
the thing.
license.
Here's the thing. The fact that there are 64 ounces is a product of the market, right? It
Right.
means that people
Want
wanted
it.
64 ounces.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Well, they have a long road trip, and they don't want to,
So therein lies the fundamental principal difference between our position and the Bloombergs of the world, right? The Bloombergs and all the people in that box, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, they might argue whether 64 ounces is too big or too small, and somebody may say, oh, no, we should ban them all the way down to 32, and the other guy says, no, we shouldn't ban this area because, these drinks aren't that bad. We should ban trans fatty acids or something else. And we're sitting back here saying, wait a second. We agree that these are bad, but that's not the right question.
Yeah.
That's not the right question. The right question is, are competent adults peacefully using this stuff? Because if they're peacefully using this stuff and they're only hurting themselves, they own themselves, folks. That's how a free society works.
So I have to ask you a question now. We're almost at the end of the show, but I learned something in the last couple of days that I was just blown away by, and I don't know the reason, except I know it's a tax thing. Maybe you can explain this to me. And I'm not a smoker by any means, but I'm just curious because I can't believe that this is the case. Somebody asked me the other day, they were moving their stuff. They said, can you stop by and pick me up a pack of smokes? And I thought, well, sure, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. So I stopped by. It was $8.
Yeah.
At
Oh
Quick
my
Trip.
gosh,
I'm like,
I know.
I mean, I pull out like $2-3. I'm like, I said to this is Terry. I said to my 14-year-old kid, I go, you think $3 is enough? And he laughed at me. The guy goes, that'll be $7.98.
And there's an
Oh
important
my
point here
God.
too, because a lot of people don't know this.
But here was the point to it.
and I have a point too.
The point to it, recently I'm doing some research. It said, watch out when you go to Costa Rica. All name brand cigarettes, $1.15 a pack.
Well, because there's no
Pack.
because there's no tax over there.
How is that?
Taxes.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Can
Get
taxes
back
be
to
that
my-
much?
Yes.
My point was, there's a market, and if people want to smoke, they're going to pay $7.
Yep,
They'll
no
pay
doubt about
more.
it. And so let me just say this: a lot of people
They
don't
will,
realize
and
this.
that's why it's okay for them to charge $7.
And a lot of people don't realize this, that tobacco cigarettes are perfectly legal, and they're, as you say, $8 a pack. But there is a black market in cigarettes, and I have represented people in criminal cases for cigarette smuggling. Now, why would somebody smuggle cigarettes when
They're
they were legal?
cheaper.
Why?
No
Because as you
taxes.
point out, the market price of a cigarette is so much lower than the artificially inflated sin tax kind of price. If the market can create the cigarette at $1 a pack, and yet we're selling them for $8 a pack, there's
There's a
$7.
great bit of room
There's
in
a
there.
$7 profit in there for the black market. And so now people are manufacturing $1 cigarettes, right? And selling them for what, $5 maybe, and pocketing the difference.
And making a
That's
ton.
the
Because
way
they're not paying the tax.
that's
Holy cow.
you
The
can't,
Indian reservation,
You can't
you can do
ignore economics. Economics is where the rubber hits the road. It's like you can't keep printing up sheets of $100 bills, folks, and think that your economy is going to keep chugging along indefinitely. Eventually, you got to pay the piper. So the point here is, really, we'd all be better off in a free society. Then we wouldn't have to have criminal cases about people smuggling in tobacco cigarettes. And why are they $8? Because we're trying to control other people's habits. We're trying to force other people not to smoke. Well, if we can make a good solid case to them, and maybe they'll understand the case, and maybe they'll choose not to smoke. If we can't do that, they're still going to smoke. Even at $8 a pack, as Tracy points out, or less than that in the black market, as
Or more
we've
than that.
seen. Yeah.
They'll pay more.
They'll pay more too.
Yeah, Elisa out there, just like Tracy said, go to the reservation. They're cheaper. Although I'm not a smoker, it was just kind of a point I was curious about. Thank you, Elisa.
We didn't get to a lot of the stories. We were going to talk about Christopher Dorner and some of the other stories, but we didn't have time.
Yeah, we'll get to that next time. We had great calls this time.
We did.
Yes, really
Just
good.
when we were losing a little bit of confidence in the last few
I was
episodes.
getting scared.
Don't begrudge the Attorney for Freedom show listeners out there. We got good callers with good questions this time. Every single one was a good question, I think. I'm glad that we got every caller. I wish some of them would come on the air. Do you ask them if they come?
Absolutely.
Oh, I mean, we're not scary.
Oh, we'll have shows where they'll all be on the air. I mean, it just
we're not
that
scary.
way.
I put them on the air. Look, if you're afraid to come on the air, there's nothing to be scared about. We very much like it when people disagree, but just come with a position.
But some people get scared. Like, I remember my first show, I didn't want to talk, and I was like deer in the headlights. So maybe they have the same fear as me. So
yeah, but they're not even being seen though. So it's
I'm not being seen either. Well, supposedly,
Yeah,
you can't see me right now. Can anyone see me right now?
Hey Joe, why isn't Tracy on camera? You got to fix this because there's a whole segment of our viewers out there that just tuned in just to see Tracy.
Hi.
There she is. And happy Valentine's Day, baby.
Thank you.
Hey,
And happy Valentine's Day.
Right here on the air at the end of the Attorney for Freedom show.
Okay, ready?
Give me a little smooch.
Okay. Mwah. Mwah.
Nice.
There you had it right there on the air.
I want to say happy Valentine's Day to my baby too, because she's probably going to watch this later. Happy Valentine's Day, Bernadette.
That's right.
Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Hey, let me just leave you with this last thought. Valentine's Day is really about love. You can't have love and peace and freedom. A professor of mine, Butler Schaefer, looked at the, I think it's called etymology, the origins of those words. You know, they all have the same root. They come from the same place.
Absolutely.
Peace and freedom and love, they all grow from the same tree. And that's really,
one love.
That's really what we're talking about on this show. We're talking about peace and freedom. You can't have peace without freedom. You can't have freedom if you're coercing other people to live in any particular way. Let people be peaceful. Let them be free, even if we disagree.
And I'm gonna have a Coke.
And I'm gonna send a nice smooch out there to Elisa on the phone out there that's listening. There you go, Elisa. Happy Valentine's Day.
And on that note, Joe, take us out.
I will. All right, here we go.
Freedom is the answer. What's the question? You have been listening to the Attorney for Freedom radio show, hosted by the original man of peace and high-profile attorney for freedom, Marc J. Victor. See you next week, same time, for another dose of freedom. Until then, peace out.